My 20th birthday morning started with the most devastating betrayal I had ever experienced. I woke up to the sound of my mother Linda tearing down the streamers I had hung the night before, her face twisted with frustration as she dismantled every trace of celebration. My 16-year-old brother Danny stood in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing a smug grin that made my stomach turn. He had just finished screaming at her for 20 minutes about how unfair his punishment was for crashing our family car while drunk driving last weekend. The final blow came when he declared with pure venom, "If I can't have fun, neither can she." Mom chose his emotional blackmail over my milestone birthday, calling relatives to cancel, throwing away decorations while I watched in complete shock. The golden child had won again, and I realized this wasn't just about a party. This was about 20 years of being invisible in my own family, and everything was about to change today. I stood frozen in our living room doorway, watching my mother systematically destroy every preparation I had spent weeks planning. The blue and silver streamers that matched my college colors lay crumpled in a garbage bag. The "Happy 20th Birthday, Jeff" banner, which had cost me $40 from my Best Buy paycheck, was being rolled up and shoved into the hall closet like some shameful secret. Linda moved with mechanical efficiency, her real estate agent training showing as she handled this crisis like any other problem requiring immediate resolution. My mind reeled as I calculated the damage. Tyler and Brandon were already driving 2 hours from State University to celebrate with me. My girlfriend Sarah had taken the day off from her nursing classes to help coordinate everything. Grandmother Ruth had spent yesterday evening baking my favorite 3-layer lemon cake, the same recipe she had used for every birthday since I was 7 years old. The catered sandwiches from Delancey's Deli were scheduled for delivery at noon. Cousins, family, friends, and neighbors had all confirmed their attendance throughout the week. All of it destroyed because Danny couldn't handle facing consequences for his reckless behavior. Linda's phone calls began immediately. I listened to her apologetic voice as she contacted each family member, spinning elaborate excuses about sudden illness and family emergencies. She avoided mentioning Danny's name, instead crafting vague explanations about unexpected circumstances and difficult timing. Her sister Jennifer received the first call, followed by our neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez, then Aunt Patricia from across town. Each conversation became more strained as Linda struggled to maintain her fabricated story. Danny lounged on our leather sectional sofa, scrolling through his phone with complete indifference to the chaos he had created. His sandy brown hair fell across his forehead in that deliberately messy style he spent 30 minutes perfecting each morning. At 16, he had already mastered every manipulation technique in the book, wielding his anxiety diagnosis like a weapon whenever accountability threatened his comfort zone. The drunk driving incident last weekend should have resulted in serious consequences, but Linda had already reduced his punishment twice after his tearful performances about feeling overwhelmed and misunderstood. The reality of our family dynamic crashed over me with stunning clarity. For 20 years, I had served as the emotional buffer between Danny's chaos and the outside world. I remembered missing my senior prom to stay home during one of his mental health crises, which turned out to be manufactured drama because his girlfriend had broken up with him. I had used $3,000 from my college fund to pay for his specialized therapy after the car crash money I had earned through 2 years of weekend shifts at Best Buy. I had declined scholarship interviews at better universities because Danny needed me home during his supposed recovery period. Danny's voice carried from the living room as he spoke to his friend Kevin on speakerphone. "Yeah, man, I totally got the whole party canceled just by turning on the waterworks. My mom falls for it every single time. You should have seen Jeff's face when she started taking down all his stupid decorations. It was absolutely priceless. Now we can hang out tonight instead of dealing with all his boring college friends." Something fundamental shifted inside my chest. The familiar weight of family responsibility, the constant anxiety about managing everyone else's emotions, the exhaustion of being the family peacekeeper, all of it lifted in a single moment of perfect clarity. I walked upstairs to my bedroom and pulled my old Army surplus duffel bag from the closet. The olive green canvas had belonged to my grandfather William, who had carried it through 3 tours in Vietnam. I began folding my clothes with methodical precision, choosing only the essentials. Work uniforms from Best Buy, a week's worth of casual clothes, my laptop computer, important documents, and the leather-bound journal Ruth had given me for high school graduation. Danny's laughter echoed through the house as he continued his phone conversation, completely oblivious to the consequences of his actions. Linda's voice grew more frantic with each call as relatives began asking pointed questions about the sudden cancellation. Her careful explanations were falling apart under scrutiny from family members who had rearranged their Saturday plans to attend my celebration. I packed my birth certificate, social security card, bank statements, and the acceptance letter from the Best Buy management training program I had been considering instead of returning to college in the fall. My grades had suffered under the constant stress of family drama, and the retail career path suddenly seemed more appealing than struggling through 2 more years of distracted studying. As I zipped the duffel bag closed, I felt lighter than I had in years. No more walking on eggshells around Danny's volatile moods. No more sacrificing my opportunities to manage his crises. No more being the invisible middle child whose needs came last in every family decision. I sat at my desk and wrote a simple note on notebook paper. Gone to think, will be in touch. I placed it on my pillow where Linda would eventually find it, then shouldered the duffel bag and walked downstairs. Danny was still on the phone now, describing in detail how he planned to manipulate Linda into lifting his driving restriction by Monday. Linda stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of party planning, her face pale as another relative expressed disappointment about the cancellation. I walked past both of them without a word, opened the front door of our split-level ranch house, and stepped into the cool October morning air. The freedom felt intoxicating. My Honda Civic sat in our driveway next to the dented Camry that Danny had crashed into a guardrail while driving under the influence. The contrast between our vehicles told the complete story of our family's priorities. My car, purchased with money I had saved from 18 months of part-time work, remained pristine because I treated it with respect. Danny's car, bought brand new by Linda as a 16th birthday present, bore the scars of his reckless attitude toward everything in his life. I threw my duffel bag into the back seat and drove toward Sarah's apartment complex on the east side of town. She lived in Bradford Commons, a modest development popular with college students and young professionals. Her nursing program required intense studying, so she had chosen a quiet 1-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor with excellent natural light and minimal distractions. Sarah opened her door wearing jeans and a green sweater that complemented her auburn hair. Her smile faded immediately when she saw my expression and the duffel bag slung over my shoulder. "What happened?" she asked, stepping aside to let me enter. I told her everything. About waking up to destroyed decorations, about Danny's manipulation, about Linda's complete capitulation to his demands, about the overheard phone conversation that revealed the calculated nature of his sabotage. Sarah listened without interruption, her nursing training evident in her calm, analytical responses. "You did the right thing," she said finally. "I've watched your family dynamics for 8 months now, Jeff. This was inevitable." Her apartment smelled like vanilla candles and the tomato sauce she had been preparing for dinner. The dining table was set for 2 with cloth napkins and the good plates she usually reserved for special occasions. A small wrapped present sat next to my place setting. "You were still planning to celebrate," I said, feeling overwhelmed by her thoughtfulness. "Of course I was. It's your 20th birthday. That's a significant milestone regardless of what your family thinks." We ate dinner together in peaceful quiet, something impossible in my family home, where every meal involved managing Danny's complaints or mediating arguments between him and Linda. Sarah had prepared my favorite pasta dish with homemade garlic bread and a Caesar salad. For dessert, she presented me with a small chocolate cake from the bakery near campus. "I couldn't compete with your grandmother's lemon cake," she said with a shy smile, "but I wanted you to have something sweet today." The gift she had wrapped was a leather portfolio designed for job interviews and business meetings. Inside, she had tucked a handwritten card that read, "For all the opportunities ahead of you. I believe in your future even when your family doesn't." I slept on Sarah's couch that night, wrapped in her spare blankets, and experienced something I hadn't felt in years: complete peace. No tiptoeing around Danny's moods, no anxiety about what crisis might erupt before morning, no responsibility for managing everyone else's emotions. Just quiet rest in a space where I was genuinely welcomed. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and text messages from Linda. I let them go to voicemail, not ready to engage with her guilt and manipulation tactics. By Sunday morning, she had left 14 messages progressing from anger to worry to desperation. "Jeff, where are you? This is ridiculous. Come home right now. Your brother is having a panic attack because you left. How could you abandon us like this? I'm calling the police if you don't answer your phone in the next hour. Please just call me back. We can work this out. Danny feels terrible about what happened." Sarah and I spent Sunday morning at her kitchen table drinking coffee and discussing my options. She had completed her associate degree in nursing and would be starting her bachelor's program in January. Her apartment lease ran through next summer, and she earned enough from her part-time job at the medical center to cover her expenses. "You could stay here," she offered. "The couch isn't ideal long-term, but we could make it work until you figure out your next step." I called Best Buy and spoke with my manager Carol about transitioning to full-time status. The management training program offered excellent benefits, including health insurance and tuition reimbursement if I decided to continue my education later. My college grades had been mediocre at best, largely due to the constant stress of family drama affecting my ability to concentrate on studying. "I've been hoping you'd consider this path," Carol said over the phone. "You have natural leadership abilities and genuine customer service skills. The company could use more managers like you." Monday morning brought a surprising phone call from my grandmother, Ruth. At 73, she maintained the sharp intelligence and direct communication style that had served her well during 40 years as a high school mathematics teacher. "Jeffrey, your mother has been calling everyone in the family, trying to paint you as the villain in this situation," Ruth said without preamble. "She's claiming you abandoned the family during a crisis and that Danny is devastated by your departure." "That's not exactly how it happened, Grandma." "I know it's not. I've been watching your brother's behavior for months, documenting everything I've witnessed. The car crash wasn't his first incident, just the first one your mother couldn't hide from the police." Ruth's revelation stunned me. She had been quietly keeping records of Danny's escalating behavior, including photographs of property damage at her house, copies of expensive therapy bills, and even audio recordings of phone conversations where Danny had threatened family members. "Why didn't you say anything before?" "Because I knew this day would come eventually. I've been preparing evidence for when someone finally had the courage to stop enabling his behavior. That someone turned out to be you." She offered to meet me for lunch to discuss what she had discovered. As I hung up the phone, I realized my quiet departure had set larger forces in motion. The family's carefully maintained facade was beginning to crack, and the truth about our dysfunction was finally surfacing. Ruth's revelation transformed everything I thought I knew about my family situation. We met at Anderson's family restaurant, a quiet establishment she frequented with her book club, where she spread a manila folder across our corner booth table. The documentation she had compiled was extensive and meticulous, organized with the precision of someone who had spent decades grading algebra homework. "Your brother damaged my garden shed last spring when I refused to give him gas money," she said, showing me photographs of splintered wood and broken hinges. "He claimed it was an accident, but you can see the hammer marks where he deliberately destroyed the lock mechanism." The folder contained copies of therapy invoices totaling over $8,000, all paid by Linda, despite their family's modest income. There were screenshots of threatening text messages Danny had sent to various relatives when they declined his requests for money. Most disturbing was a series of audio recordings Ruth had made during family gatherings, capturing Danny's manipulation tactics in vivid detail. "I started recording after he threatened to hurt my cat when I wouldn't let him use my computer for his school project," Ruth explained. "Listen to this one from your cousin Jennifer's wedding reception." The recording revealed Danny convincing Linda to leave the wedding early because he felt overwhelmed by social interaction. In reality, he wanted to attend a party at his friend's house where alcohol would be available. His performance was masterful, combining fake tears with vague complaints about anxiety until Linda felt guilty for forcing him to attend a family celebration. He's been using the same playbook for years, Ruth continued. Create a crisis, escalate the emotional manipulation, then position himself as the victim when anyone tries to set boundaries. Ruth reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope containing $2,100 bills. "This is from my savings account," she said. "Consider it an investment in your independence." "Grandma, I can't take your money." "You're not taking it. I'm giving it to someone who deserves a chance to build a healthy life. Your grandfather Walter would have done the same thing." The money provided exactly what I needed to establish genuine independence. Sarah and I found a small one-bedroom apartment in Riverside Gardens, a complex favored by young professionals working in the nearby business district. The rent was affordable when split between two incomes, and the location offered easy access to both my job and Sarah's nursing program. My performance at Best Buy improved dramatically once I was free from the constant stress of family chaos. Without Danny's crises interrupting my sleep and concentration, I could focus completely on customer service and inventory management. Carol noticed the change immediately and fast-tracked my entry into the management training program. "You've been like a different person these past 2 weeks," she observed during my performance review. "More confident, more decisive, better with both customers and team members." The training program involved rotations through different departments, learning everything from loss prevention to employee scheduling. I discovered a natural aptitude for problem-solving and team leadership that had been suppressed under years of family dysfunction. Other managers began requesting me for their shifts because of my reliability and positive attitude. Sarah and I settled into a routine that felt remarkably healthy compared to my family experience. We shared household responsibilities, equally communicated openly about problems, and supported each other's goals without creating artificial drama. For the first time in my life, I experienced what a functional relationship looked like when both people contributed equally and respected each other's boundaries. My phone continued buzzing with messages from Linda, but the tone had shifted from anger to increasingly desperate pleas. She alternated between guilt trips about abandoning the family and vague promises that things would get better if I just came home. Meanwhile, Danny's behavior was escalating, without me present to serve as a buffer between his chaos and the outside world. Sarah heard through her network of friends that he had been arrested for shoplifting at Valley Mall, caught stealing expensive cologne and video games. Linda had bailed him out and hired an attorney to negotiate a plea deal, draining her savings account in the process. I started therapy through Best Buy's Employee Assistance Program, meeting weekly with Dr. Patricia Morrison, a licensed clinical social worker who specialized in family dysfunction and codependency. The sessions helped me understand the psychological patterns that had trapped me in the role of family caretaker since childhood. "You were parentified," Dr. Morrison explained during our third session. "Your mother made you responsible for managing your brother's emotions and behavior, which prevented you from developing your own identity and pursuing your own goals." The therapy provided me with vocabulary to describe experiences I had never been able to articulate. Terms like emotional parentification, golden child syndrome, and scapegoating suddenly made sense of 20 years of confusing family dynamics. "Setting boundaries isn't selfish," Dr. Morrison emphasized. "It's necessary for your psychological health and actually better for your family members in the long run. Enabling destructive behavior helps no one." 4 weeks after my departure, I received a disturbing phone call from Marcus, my former college roommate, who still lived near my family's neighborhood. He had discovered something that changed everything I thought I knew about Danny's manipulation. "Jeff, I think your brother has been stealing your identity," Marcus said. "I saw him at the post office picking up packages addressed to you at your mom's house. When I asked him about it, he got really defensive and claimed you had told him to handle your mail." Marcus had noticed other suspicious activity as well. Danny had been using my name when applying for credit cards online, forging my signature on financial documents, and having merchandise delivered to Linda's address. The theft was systematic and extensive, potentially involving thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges. The discovery forced me to confront a harsh reality. Leaving my toxic family situation had been necessary for my own survival, but it had also exposed the true extent of Danny's criminal behavior. Without me present to cover for him and manage the consequences of his actions, his destructive patterns were finally becoming visible to the outside world. The identity theft discovery hit me like a physical blow. I sat in Sarah's living room staring at my laptop screen as I logged into credit monitoring websites to assess the damage. 3 credit cards had been opened in my name during the past 6 weeks, all with maximum balances totaling over $4,000. The purchases revealed Danny's priorities: expensive gaming equipment, designer clothing, restaurant charges, and online gambling deposits. Sarah sat beside me on the couch, her nursing training evident in how she methodically helped me document each fraudulent transaction. We printed screenshots, organized receipts, and created a timeline of when each card had been activated. Her calm professionalism kept me grounded, while my anger threatened to overwhelm rational thinking. "We need to contact the police immediately," Sarah said. "This isn't just sibling rivalry anymore. It's felony identity theft." Detective Maria Rodriguez at the Township Police Station listened to my story with the patience of someone who had handled similar family crimes before. She explained that identity theft by relatives was more common than people realized, often involving complicated emotional dynamics that made prosecution challenging. "The amounts involved put this in felony territory," she said, reviewing the evidence I had compiled. "Your brother is 16, but depending on the total damages, he could be tried as an adult." The legal implications terrified me, not because I wanted to protect Danny, but because I understood how his prosecution would affect Linda. She had already sacrificed her financial stability and emotional health trying to manage his behavior. Criminal charges would push her past her breaking point. Detective Rodriguez gave me 72 hours to decide whether to file formal charges or attempt to resolve the situation through family intervention. She warned me that pressing charges would trigger an automatic investigation that could result in Danny facing adult criminal penalties. I was scheduled to work the afternoon shift at Best Buy when Linda appeared in the store unannounced. She had clearly been crying her usually polished real estate agent appearance, replaced by rumpled clothes and disheveled hair. She approached the customer service counter where I was helping an elderly man with a return, creating an awkward scene that drew attention from other shoppers. "Jeffrey, we need to talk right now," she demanded, ignoring the customer and my co-worker Jennifer, who was trying to maintain professional service standards. Carol emerged from her office, having witnessed Linda's dramatic entrance. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to wait outside while my employee finishes with this customer," she said firmly. "This is my son, and we have a family emergency that can't wait," Linda shot back. "Then you can discuss it after his shift ends or during his break. Right now, he's working." Carol's protection meant everything to me. She had watched me grow into a confident employee and wasn't about to let family drama undermine my professional development. Linda was forced to wait in the parking lot, pacing between cars while I completed my remaining 3 hours of work. When my shift ended, I found Linda sitting in her silver Toyota Corolla engine, running for warmth against the October chill. I approached her passenger window, maintaining my distance instead of getting into the car where she could control the conversation dynamics. "Danny told me about the credit cards," she said through the rolled-down window. "It was just a misunderstanding. He was trying to help you build credit history by forging my signature and having merchandise shipped to your address. He made a mistake. He's just a kid who doesn't understand how these things work. You can't seriously be thinking about pressing charges against your own brother." Linda's desperation was genuine, but her explanations revealed the same enabling patterns that had allowed Danny's behavior to escalate for years. She offered to pay back every penny from her retirement account to increase Danny's therapy sessions to implement stricter supervision at home. "I'll give you 72 hours to get Danny into residential treatment," I said. Real treatment, not another therapist he can manipulate. If he's not admitted to a legitimate program by Thursday, I file criminal charges. You can't be serious. Residential treatment costs thousands of dollars and our insurance won't cover it. Then you should have thought about that before enabling his behavior for 16 years. I walked back to my car, leaving Linda crying in the parking lot. The conversation had been one of the most difficult of my life, but Dr. Morrison had prepared me for exactly this scenario. Setting ultimatums felt cruel, but continued enabling would ultimately harm everyone involved, including Danny himself. Thanksgiving was approaching, and Sarah invited me to join her family's celebration in Springfield, a 2-hour drive south of our city. The Johnson family gathering provided a stark contrast to the chaos I had grown up accepting as normal. Sarah's parents, Robert and Karen, welcomed me with genuine warmth. Her younger siblings, Michael and Emma, included me in their conversations naturally, without the walking on eggshells dynamic I associated with family interactions. The Johnsons handled disagreements through direct communication, rather than manipulation. When Sarah's uncle expressed political views that others found objectionable, the family discussed their differences respectfully and then moved on to other topics. No one stormed out, created artificial crises, or demanded that everyone else manage their emotional reactions. "This is how families are supposed to work," I whispered to Sarah as we helped clear dishes after dinner. "I know your family situation has been difficult," her mother Karen said later, pulling me aside. "But please know that you're always welcome here. Family isn't just about blood relations." Meanwhile, Danny's response to my ultimatum revealed the depth of his manipulation skills. He launched a campaign to paint me as the villain, calling relatives to claim I was trying to destroy the family and seeking revenge for stupid childhood grudges. He threatened suicide if anyone tried to force him into residential treatment, weaponizing his mental health diagnosis to avoid accountability. Linda called me repeatedly, relaying Danny's threats and begging me to reconsider. She had found several treatment facilities but couldn't afford the fees without liquidating her retirement savings. Danny refused to participate in any admission interviews, claiming the facilities were prisons for kids whose families don't love them. On Wednesday evening, with less than 24 hours remaining before my deadline, I received a call from Mrs. Patterson, our elderly next-door neighbor. Her voice shook as she described what had been happening in our neighborhood since my departure. "Jeffrey, I don't know who else to call," she said. "Your brother has been terrorizing everyone on the street. He's been vandalizing cars, threatening the Chen family next door, and we think he's been dealing drugs from your mother's house. Social services has been called 3 times, but your mother keeps telling them everything is fine." The revelation opened floodgates I hadn't expected. Mrs. Patterson had been documenting Danny's behavior for months, keeping a detailed log of incidents that Linda had successfully hidden from extended family and authorities. The picture she painted was far worse than I had imagined. Danny had become a neighborhood menace, using our family home as a base for increasingly serious criminal activity. Without my presence to serve as a buffer and cover story for his behavior, his true nature was finally becoming visible to the community around us. Mrs. Patterson's phone call led to revelations that stunned me with their scope and severity. She had been quietly networking with other neighbors, documenting Danny's behavior with the methodical precision of someone who had spent 30 years as a paralegal before retirement. Her evidence folder rivaled Ruth's collection in its thoroughness. "The Williams family is considering moving because of what your brother did to their daughter Emma," Mrs. Patterson explained during our meeting at her kitchen table the next morning. "He cornered her at the bus stop and threatened to hurt her if she didn't give him money for drugs. She's only 14 years old, Jeffrey." The neighborhood meeting Mrs. Patterson organized for Thursday evening drew 12 families from our street and the surrounding blocks. They gathered in the community center conference room, sharing stories that painted a horrifying picture of Danny's impact on their daily lives. I attended with Sarah, listening in shocked silence as neighbors described months of intimidation and criminal behavior. Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who lived directly across from our house, spoke in halting English about being afraid to retrieve her mail because Danny and his friends loitered near the mailboxes, making crude comments and demanding money. The Martinez family had security cameras installed after Danny broke their car windshield with a baseball bat, claiming it was an accident, despite clear video evidence of deliberate destruction. Property values are dropping because people won't look at houses on our street, reported Jim Bradley, a local realtor. 3 families have listed their homes in the past month, all citing safety concerns. Detective Rodriguez attended the meeting taking notes as residents described incident after incident that had gone unreported due to fear of retaliation. Danny had created a climate of intimidation that extended far beyond our family's dysfunction. We have enough evidence now to pursue multiple felony charges, Detective Rodriguez informed me privately after the meeting. Breaking and entering drug distribution assault terroristic threats, and that's just from what we heard tonight. The accumulated testimony revealed that my identity theft was merely one component of Danny's expanding criminal enterprise. He had been using our family home as a drug distribution center, selling marijuana and prescription pills to middle school students. His friend Kevin served as his primary accomplice, helping to intimidate neighbors who complained about their activities. I called Linda that night to inform her that the 72-hour deadline had expired and that I would be filing charges the next morning. Her response revealed how completely she had lost touch with reality. "These neighbors are just looking for someone to blame for their own problems," she insisted. "Danny has been going through a difficult time since you abandoned us, but he's not some kind of criminal mastermind. He's just a confused teenager acting out because his brother deserted the family. Linda, he's been dealing drugs to middle schoolers. He threatened to hurt a 14-year-old girl. This isn't teenage rebellion anymore. You're exaggerating everything because you want to justify running away from your responsibilities. If you had stayed home and helped me manage his behavior, none of this would have happened." Her refusal to acknowledge the severity of Danny's actions forced me to recognize that my mother was psychologically incapable of accepting reality. Years of enabling had created a delusional system where Danny could do no wrong, and everyone else was responsible for the consequences of his choices. Meanwhile, my professional life continued to flourish in ways that would have been impossible while managing family chaos. Carol nominated me for the Regional Rising Star Award, recognizing employees under 25 who demonstrated exceptional leadership potential. My store's customer satisfaction scores had improved significantly during the months since my promotion to assistant manager. "You've helped create a positive team culture that customers notice immediately when they walk in," Carol explained during my performance review. "Team members feel supported, customers feel valued, and our sales numbers reflect that improvement." The recognition meant more to me than any family approval I had ever sought. I was building success based on my own efforts and character, rather than trying to manage other people's dysfunction. Sarah celebrated each milestone with genuine pride, understanding how much my professional growth meant after years of family-imposed limitations. On Friday morning, I met with a counselor from Henderson Valley Treatment Center, a residential facility that specialized in adolescents with behavioral disorders and substance abuse issues. Director Janet Walsh explained their program's approach to young people like Danny who had been enabled by family systems. "Successful treatment requires the family to stop rescue behaviors completely," she explained. "Parents and siblings must allow natural consequences to occur, which is often the most difficult part of the process." I arranged for Walsh to meet with Linda, Detective Rodriguez, and myself the following Tuesday for a formal intervention. Ruth agreed to attend, bringing her documentation to support our position. The intervention would present Linda with a clear choice: voluntary admission for Danny or criminal prosecution that could result in adult charges. Danny's response to learning about the planned intervention revealed the depths of his manipulative abilities. He launched a sustained campaign of emotional blackmail, threatening suicide while simultaneously raging about how I was trying to destroy the family out of jealousness and spite. His friend Kevin called me directly, claiming Danny was seriously considering hurting himself because of my cruel ultimatum. Kevin described finding Danny crying hysterically while holding a knife, dramatically threatening self-harm if anyone tried to abandon him to some institution. Dr. Morrison helped me understand that these suicide threats were part of Danny's established pattern of escalating manipulation when other tactics failed. Genuine suicide risk requires professional evaluation, she explained, but threats used to avoid consequences follow a different psychological pattern. The intervention was scheduled for Tuesday afternoon at the police station, providing a neutral location where Danny couldn't control the environment through emotional outbursts. Detective Rodriguez would present the criminal evidence, Walsh would explain the treatment options, and I would make my position clear about pressing charges if Danny refused voluntary admission. Monday night, Danny made his most serious mistake yet. In a final attempt to maintain control, he physically attacked me when I arrived at Linda's house to collect my remaining belongings. I had arranged to pick up my winter clothes and some books with Sarah present as a witness, expecting possible verbal confrontation, but not physical violence. Danny was waiting in the garage when we arrived, his face twisted with rage that seemed completely genuine rather than his usual calculated performances. "You think you're so smart trying to send me away so you can be the perfect son," he screamed before lunging at me with his fist swinging. The attack was brief, but vicious. Danny managed to connect with 2 solid punches to my ribs before I could restrain him, then attempted to choke me with both hands around my throat. Sarah called 911 while I struggled to break free, and the entire assault was witnessed by Mrs. Patterson, who had been retrieving her mail when the commotion started. Police arrived within 6 minutes, finding Danny still screaming threats while I sat on the garage floor catching my breath. The physical attack provided grounds for immediate arrest and involuntary psychiatric commitment, removing any remaining choice about treatment versus prosecution. Detective Rodriguez placed Danny in handcuffs while explaining his rights, but his response demonstrated how completely he had lost touch with reality. Instead of recognizing the severity of his situation, he continued ranting about how everyone was conspiring against him, and how I deserved everything he had done. As the police car pulled out of our driveway with Danny in the back seat, Linda collapsed onto the garage floor, finally confronting the undeniable evidence of her son's violent potential. For the first time in 16 years, she had witnessed behavior that couldn't be explained away or minimized through denial. Danny's arrest and psychiatric hold forced everyone involved to confront realities that had been carefully hidden behind years of enabling and manipulation. The hospital evaluation process revealed the true extent of his psychological dysfunction, documented by professionals who couldn't be charmed or intimidated into minimizing their findings. Dr. Stephen Nash, the psychiatrist conducting Danny's evaluation, met with Linda and me 3 days after the assault. His report was clinical and devastating, describing conduct disorder progressing toward antisocial personality disorder exacerbated by substance abuse and years of avoided consequences. The attack on me had been captured on Mrs. Patterson's security camera, providing clear evidence of Danny's capacity for violence. "Your son exhibits classic patterns of manipulation, lack of empathy, and escalating antisocial behavior," Dr. Nash explained to Linda. "The family enabling has prevented him from developing healthy coping mechanisms or understanding natural consequences for his actions." Linda's response to the professional assessment revealed the depth of her own psychological damage. She alternated between denial and guilt, sometimes claiming the doctors didn't understand Danny's sensitive nature, and other times collapsing into self-blame about being a terrible mother who failed both her sons. The enabling behavior often stems from the parent's own trauma history, Dr. Nash continued. Recovery requires intensive therapy for all family members, not just the identified patient. Linda began weekly sessions with Dr. Rebecca Torres, a family therapist who specialized in codependency and enabling relationships. The initial sessions were painful to witness as Linda confronted how her own childhood experiences with an alcoholic father had led to dysfunctional parenting patterns with Danny. "I was so afraid of being like my father, who was harsh and critical, that I went too far in the opposite direction," Linda admitted during a joint session I attended. "I thought unconditional support meant never setting boundaries or allowing Danny to experience disappointment. Danny remained in residential psychiatric care while awaiting trial for the assault charges and identity theft. The facility allowed limited family contact, strictly supervised to prevent manipulation. His first phone call to Linda involved threats and demands for immediate release, followed by fake tears and promises to get better if she would just bring him home. Dr. Torres helped Linda recognize these communication patterns as continued manipulation rather than genuine remorse. True change requires accountability and sustained effort, not just promises made to avoid consequences, she explained. Meanwhile, I faced my own decision point about rebuilding family relationships. Dr. Morrison encouraged me to consider what level of contact felt healthy rather than what family obligations dictated. You can choose to maintain limited relationships with clear boundaries, she explained, but you're not required to sacrifice your well-being to prove your love for family members. My career continued advancing despite the family crisis. Best Buy offered me a promotion to manage my own store location in Cedar Falls, a growing suburb 40 miles north of our current city. The position included a significant salary increase and the opportunity to build a team from scratch, using everything I had learned about healthy workplace dynamics. Sarah received a job offer from Cedar Falls Regional Hospital, where they desperately needed experienced nurses for their expanding pediatric unit. Her nursing degree and previous experience made her an attractive candidate, and the position offered better benefits than her current job. We decided to accept both opportunities, viewing the relocation as a chance to build our life together, without the constant stress of family proximity. The distance would provide natural boundaries while still allowing contact when we chose to engage. Danny's residential treatment involved intensive individual therapy, group counseling, and educational programs designed to address his behavioral patterns. Progress was slow and often inconsistent, with periods of apparent improvement, followed by setbacks and manipulation attempts. His therapist, Dr. Michael Stevens, specialized in adolescents with conduct disorder and wasn't susceptible to Danny's usual charm offensive. Treatment success requires genuine motivation to change, which typically develops only after experiencing real consequences, he explained during a family conference. 3 months into treatment, Danny wrote me a letter that seemed different from his previous attempts at manipulation. The handwriting was careful rather than rushed, and the content focused on specific behaviors rather than vague promises. "I know I messed up your credit and stole money from you," the letter read. "I also know that saying sorry doesn't fix what I did or mean you should trust me again. I'm trying to understand why I thought it was okay to hurt people, especially you who never did anything mean to me." Dr. Morrison helped me craft a response that acknowledged his letter without making commitments about future relationships. "You can support his recovery process without becoming responsible for managing it," she advised. My father, Marcus, emerged as an unexpected source of support during this period. He had been following my situation through Ruth, who maintained contact despite his absence from family gatherings. Marcus called me directly, expressing regret for leaving and pride in how I had handled an impossible situation. "I left because I couldn't watch your mother enable Danny's behavior anymore," he admitted during our first conversation in 3 years. "But I should have fought harder to maintain a relationship with you instead of just disappearing." Marcus had rebuilt his life in Phoenix, working as a project manager for a construction company and attending therapy to address his own family dysfunction patterns. He offered insights into Linda's psychology that helped me understand her enabling behavior without excusing its impact. "Your mother grew up walking on eggshells around her father's alcoholism," Marcus explained. "She learned that keeping peace was more important than addressing problems directly. Danny figured out how to exploit that fear when he was very young. We began having monthly phone conversations that gradually rebuilt our relationship based on mutual respect rather than family obligation." Marcus expressed interest in visiting Cedar Falls once Sarah and I were settled, approaching reconnection with appropriate caution rather than demanding immediate forgiveness. Linda's therapy progress was encouraging but fragile. She began acknowledging her enabling patterns and expressing genuine remorse for the impact on both Danny and me. However, her commitment to change fluctuated, depending on Danny's behavior during their supervised visits. Recovery isn't linear, Dr. Torres reminded me during one of our joint sessions. Your mother will have setbacks, especially when Danny attempts to manipulate her emotions. The important thing is that she's finally engaging with the therapeutic process. 6 months after Danny's arrest, the legal proceedings concluded with a plea agreement that included continued residential treatment, followed by probation and community service. The identity theft charges were reduced in exchange for restitution payments and his participation in financial literacy counseling. As Danny's release date approached, Linda faced the reality of implementing boundaries with a son who had spent years successfully manipulating her through emotional blackmail. Her therapist had helped her develop specific strategies, but applying them consistently would require ongoing courage and support. I prepared to move to Cedar Falls with mixed emotions about leaving family members who were finally beginning to address their dysfunction. Dr. Morrison reminded me that my recovery didn't depend on waiting for their progress, and that maintaining my own healthy boundaries was the best contribution I could make to the family's healing process. 1 year later, I stood in my office at Best Buy Cedar Falls reviewing the grand opening preparations for what would become the most successful new store launch in the district's history. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating displays that my team had arranged with care and pride. At 21 years old, I had become the youngest store manager in the region, leading a staff of 35 employees who respected my leadership style and shared commitment to excellent customer service. Sarah arrived at the store wearing her hospital scrubs, having just completed a 12-hour shift in the pediatric intensive care unit. Her work as a registered nurse was demanding but fulfilling, providing care for children facing medical crises while supporting their frightened families. We had learned to coordinate our schedules around her rotating shifts and my retail management responsibilities. "How does it feel to be the boss of your own store?" she asked, surveying the organized chaos of final preparations. "Like everything I went through was preparation for this moment," I replied honestly. Our apartment in Cedar Falls reflected the stability we had built together over 18 months of shared decision-making and mutual support. The living room walls displayed my management awards alongside Sarah's nursing certifications. Our bookshelves contained her medical textbooks next to my business leadership guides. The kitchen table where we ate breakfast each morning had never witnessed screaming arguments or emotional manipulation. Linda attended the grand opening ceremony, driving 40 miles to witness what she called Jeffrey's amazing accomplishment. Her appearance had improved significantly since beginning therapy, and her interactions with Sarah were respectful rather than possessive. She had learned to express pride in my achievements without making them about herself or her parenting. "I'm sorry it took me so long to recognize your strength," she told me quietly during a private moment. "You deserved support for your goals instead of being expected to manage everyone else's problems." Her therapy with Dr. Torres had produced genuine insights about family dysfunction and enabling behaviors. Linda was learning to recognize Danny's manipulation attempts and respond with appropriate boundaries rather than emotional reactivity. Progress remained inconsistent, but the foundation for healthier relationships was slowly developing. Danny remained in extended residential treatment, having been transferred to a longer-term facility after violating the terms of his initial program by attempting to manipulate other residents and staff members. His letters had become more authentic over time, focusing on specific behavioral changes rather than vague promises or victim narratives. His most recent letter demonstrated real self-awareness. "I'm starting to understand that I used my anxiety diagnosis as an excuse to avoid responsibility instead of actually working on my problems. I know I hurt you and Mom and a lot of other people by acting like everyone else was supposed to fix my feelings for me." I had chosen to respond supportively but cautiously, encouraging his therapeutic progress without becoming reinvested in managing his recovery. Dr. Morrison continued helping me maintain appropriate boundaries that protected my own well-being while allowing space for family healing. Marcus visited Cedar Falls for my birthday, marking our first face-to-face meeting in 4 years. He had maintained sobriety and continued his own therapy work, building a life in Phoenix that reflected genuine personal growth rather than avoidance of family problems. "I'm proud of the man you've become," he said as we toured my store together. "You broke cycles of dysfunction that trapped multiple generations of our family." Our relationship was developing naturally based on shared interests and mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. Marcus shared insights from his construction management experience that helped me improve my leadership skills, while I provided updates about family dynamics that helped him understand the consequences of his departure. Best Buy Corporate had taken notice of our store's exceptional performance metrics. Customer satisfaction scores exceeded district averages, employee turnover was minimal, and sales growth surpassed projections by 30%. My approach of treating staff members with respect and providing clear expectations had created positive workplace culture that customers noticed immediately. "You've built something special here," said Regional Manager Patricia Williams during her quarterly visit. "We're considering you for district leadership training next year." The professional recognition meant more than any family approval I had ever sought. I was succeeding based on character and competence, rather than trying to compensate for other people's dysfunction or prove my worth through sacrifice and caretaking. Sarah and I had begun discussing marriage during quiet evenings when our schedules aligned. Her parents had embraced me as part of their family, including me in holiday celebrations and major life events without drama or conditions. The contrast with my family of origin was striking and healing. "I want to spend my life with someone who chooses growth over comfort," Sarah said one evening as we planned our future together. "You've shown me what that looks like." Our engagement took place on my 21st birthday, exactly 1 year after the canceled party that had catalyzed my departure from family dysfunction. Sarah's ring was modest but meaningful, purchased with money I had saved from managing my own financial responsibilities rather than covering other people's crises. The neighborhood where I had grown up was slowly recovering from the chaos Danny had created during his months of unsupervised criminal activity. Mrs. Patterson sent periodic updates about improvements in property values and community safety. Several families who had considered moving decided to stay after Danny's removal from the environment. "Your courage to stop enabling his behavior saved our entire street," Mrs. Chen wrote in a thank you card. "Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone's destruction." I had begun volunteering with Big Brothers Big Sisters, mentoring teenagers from dysfunctional families who reminded me of my younger self. The work was emotionally challenging but rewarding, providing opportunities to share insights about setting boundaries and pursuing personal goals despite family chaos. "You can't control your family's choices," I told Marcus, a 15-year-old whose mother enabled his older brother's drug addiction. "But you can control your response to their choices. Sometimes the healthiest decision is to step away and build your own life." My story had become a resource for other young adults struggling with similar family dynamics. Dr. Morrison occasionally asked permission to share anonymized details with clients who needed examples of successful boundary setting and family system change. As I prepared for my wedding and continued building my career, I reflected on the unexpected benefits of that devastating birthday morning when Linda chose Danny's manipulation over my milestone celebration. Walking away had forced everyone in our family to confront realities that might have remained hidden for years under continued enabling. Leaving wasn't abandonment, I realized during a therapy session. It was the most caring thing I could do for everyone involved, including Danny. Enabling his behavior was slowly destroying him along with the rest of us. The quiet departure that had felt like giving up was actually the beginning of genuine healing for our entire family system. By refusing to participate in dysfunction, I had created space for authentic change rather than continued crisis management. Sarah and I planned our wedding for the following spring, designing a celebration that reflected our values of authenticity, mutual respect, and chosen family. The guest list included relatives who had supported our growth alongside friends who had become family through shared experiences and genuine care. Looking toward the future, I understood that my experience had prepared me to build something better than what I had inherited. The cycles of manipulation and enabling that had characterized previous generations of my family would end with me. Children we might have someday would grow up in an environment that valued honesty over peacekeeping and personal responsibility over rescue behaviors. The life lesson was profound but simple. Sometimes the most powerful action is simply refusing to participate in dysfunction. By quietly removing myself from a toxic situation, I had forced everyone involved to confront the truth about our family patterns and begin the difficult work of genuine change. My 21st birthday celebration took place in our Cedar Falls apartment, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about my happiness, rather than using my special day to meet their own emotional needs. Sarah prepared my favorite dinner, while our closest friends gathered to acknowledge not just another year of life, but the transformation that had occurred since that painful morning when my mother chose my brother's tantrum over my milestone. As we raised glasses to toast the future, I felt the deep satisfaction of someone who had broken free from generational patterns of dysfunction and built something healthy in their place. The journey had been painful, but every difficult decision had led to this moment of genuine peace and authentic celebration. The birthday cake Sarah had made was perfect. The friends surrounding us were chosen family who supported our growth, and the life we were building together was based on mutual respect, rather than manipulation or enabling. For the first time in 21 years, my birthday was actually about celebrating my life and future rather than managing someone else's crisis. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between family loyalty and your own well-being? Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is step away from toxic situations and allow people to face the natural consequences of their actions. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about setting boundaries with family members who resist change. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to help others find it who might need to hear this message. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about overcoming family dysfunction and building healthy relationships. And please share this video with anyone who might benefit from understanding that choosing your own well-being isn't selfish, it's necessary for everyone's growth. Thank you for listening to my story and supporting this journey toward healing and authentic connection. I hope sharing my experience helps someone else find the courage to break cycles of dysfunction and build the life they deserve. Until next time, remember that your happiness and mental health matter just as much as anyone else's in your family.